Welcome back. Let's quickly take a look at the markets now. Starting off in the Far East, Asian markets fell on Friday. Investors keeping a nervous watch on developments, of course, out of that G20 summit. Day one has gone now, and with trade top of the agenda and a key focus on the much-anticipated meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, equities have enjoyed what has been a largely positive couple of weeks. And a lot of that on hopes of progress in that head-to-head battle between the leaders of the two economies, though the possibility of failure continues to make dealers nervous. As heads of the 20 leading economies started the summit in Osaka, Trump said he was hopeful for Saturday's talks with Xi, saying, "I think it will be productive," adding that it will be a very exciting day. Traders biding their time, pushing regional markets lower. The Shanghai Composite ending the day down 0.6%. They're just below that 3,000-point mark. The Hang Seng out in Hong Kong as well was down 0.3%, and a slight marginal fall as well for the Nikkei out in Japan. That's sitting at 21,225 points. Let's quickly head off to the United States now, where the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq managed to close higher after a broad-based rally on Thursday. Investors looked to the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan this weekend for progress in the long-running US-China trade dispute, which has whipsawed markets for months now. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial fell 11 points to 26,525, while the S&P 500 gained 0.33%, 2,924 points there. The Nasdaq Composite as well, adding 0.75%, 7,967. Let's head on over to some of the market picture numbers now as well. Then, of course, the economic data to have come out has certainly sent a few rattles throughout Europe, but certainly on the local front, nothing else matters more than that G20 summit. How things fare out will certainly be seen and will be key for tomorrow, where that meeting between President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping happens. So how have markets reacted to the news thus far of the hard lines set between the two leaders? Is certainly how you'll see the market perform right now. And a lot of red has certainly come through thus far on the JSE. However, we are managing to get a slight uptick despite the negativity, especially out in Hong Kong, where Tencent has certainly fallen this afternoon, earlier this morning. So we're seeing the industrials have a pickup, and that's despite a fall for the likes of Naspers there. On the resource counters, however, doing fairly well as the rand continues to strengthen as well. So the two main indices, the resource counters and the gold counter, really going up today. Unfortunately, a slight dip for that platinum sector, not doing as well as one would have liked. The commodities picture has been quite interesting as well there. Where exactly does gold sit? Of course, 1,400 is a very, very key mark for the yellow metal and continues to sit above that mark. Still more than $600 away from each other is the difference between platinum and gold, now sitting at $811 a fine ounce, and that oil price continuously going higher. What does that mean for the petrol price for South Africa? That announcement should be coming through, of course, very soon, as we see a petrol price hike or decrease, which is what we're looking out for next week, Wednesday. Quick look then at your currency picture, strengthening in South Africa's rand, now headed lower there to 14.11. It had actually sat at even better levels earlier today, but 14.11 is a relatively good mark considering that we had 14.50 just about a week ago. So things are faring better there. We've headed below 18 rand against the British pound and 16.14 against that euro picture. So things headed a whole lot better there. And the European markets sitting green by the seams of things, a lot more positivity coming through and perhaps hopes of a resolution to things out there in Japan as the G20 leaders meet. We'll continue to unpack this picture very quickly in a bit, but for now, let's continue with another story. President Cyril Ramaphosa holding bilateral talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping as well on the sidelines of that G20 summit in Osaka, Japan. The two leaders will also meet under the BRICS umbrella, where the members will jointly communicate a message directing the world to pay more attention to developing countries. The South African delegation in Japan is also expected to advance the cause of the African continent as a whole and speak out against unilateralism and protectionism. Our reporter Gloria Sefako-Musi filed this report from Osaka.
As the only permanent G20 member on the African continent, South Africa says it will also be putting forward development needs for the continent. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor says the BRICS countries will also meet on the sidelines of the summit and will jointly direct the world to pay more attention to the needs of developing countries. She says the world will be a better place based on multilateralism and working together to achieve inclusive growth.
Unilateral imposition of tariffs, countries appearing to believe that they can go it alone in their particular direction without concern or care for the economies of particularly countries in the developing world is something that we believe will not help us to continue to make advances. It's very clear that no country can survive without trade with the rest of the world. And to do so, we must have proper rules so that all of us are dealt with in a manner that makes us believe that the rules we're all playing to are fair.
Outside the conference center, businesses in Osaka hope they will be able to sell more during this time as the city hosts delegates from various parts of the world. With Osaka schools closed for the duration of the conference, there is hope that even locals will have more time to spend at the shops.
そうですね。
We expect that many people from abroad is coming to our shopping mall, and at the same time, due to the G20, lots of elementary school, junior high school, and senior high school has day off, so as to control the people. Therefore, we expect that those school students and family will be coming more here.
予測はしております。
Most G20 leaders have arrived over the past 2 days. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been holding bilateral meetings with the different members ahead of the summit due to start today. Flora Sifagomosi, SABC News, Osaka, Japan.
Of course, the latest information out of that will continue to unpack then for you. But here's a story that, of course, broke yesterday, and one that was quite interesting just for the future of South Africa's Reserve Bank. Daniel Minele, one of the other long-standing deputy governors of the South African Reserve Bank, deciding to not continue with another term as deputy governor of the South African Reserve Bank and stepping down. His term ends on Sunday, and that will officially be his last day in charge then of the certain committees that he's had at the South African Reserve Bank. He leaves the bank after joining them for 20 years. Since 1999, he's held positions where he was executive assistant to former senior deputy governor James Cross. He was general manager and head of the international banking and financial markets departments as well at the Reserve Bank. At present, he has held G20 and BRICS central bank deputies head there, and he was also chair of the IMF committee deputies as well, which is a whole host of deputies. Now, he does leave amidst some speculation then that he will take over as ABSA CEO. Of course, in February, we saw Maria Ramos leave the company then. Who then will step into her shoes is the question. We had Francois Groep, who of course departed the South African Reserve Bank as well. In January, there was speculation that he might take over, but that hasn't necessarily come to fruition. Let's remember that the Reserve Bank governors themselves have a 6-month cooling period as well, which means that they cannot join an entity in the financial sector for 6 months before getting back into it. And then there were 5. At the last MPC meeting, we did see the Reserve Bank Governor, Lesetja Kganyago, announce that Christopher Lowveld will become an advisor to the governor, joining the Monetary Policy Committee, allowing him, of course, to have a vote in how interest rates go. Daniel Minele was considered a hawk, meaning that he was considered to be a little more amenable to increasing interest rates rather than cutting them, and a lot of that was for his prudential abilities there. Of course, the DGs and the deputy governors, as what Daniel Minele was, are appointed by the president. Now, with the departure of Francois Groep earlier on this year and now Daniel Minele, there are 2 spots available then for deputy governor. who will the president put in place there is the next question we'll begin to ask, and he will be responsible and in charge of that. I know that the SARB board as well is speaking to the South African National Treasury, that's Tito Mboweni, and as well the president with regards to that. Governor Kganyago's current term does end in November, while Deputy Governor Kuben Naidu's first term only ends next year, 2020. Fundi Chazibana is advisor to the governor as well, and she was appointed in February 2018, and Rashad Kasim is head of the Economic Research Department and has been on the MPC since the 1st of March. Christopher Lowveld is only on a 3-year contract, but will form part of that MPC. Very quickly as well, if we take a look at just the history of things that have happened in the last year for the South African Reserve Bank, of course, a lot of speculation around the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank under deep scrutiny then by the ruling party, the African National Congress. But Brian Kahn leaving the South African Reserve Bank in September last year, of course, he retired, having been there for quite some time as well. In January this year, we saw Francois Groep as well leave the South African Reserve Bank for personal reasons. Christopher Lowveld then joined the MPC to replace Brian Kahn. He had been at the JSE for quite at the South African Reserve Bank rather since around 2011. That's Christopher Lowveld. But then the governor decided to appoint him as an advisor. And of course, then on June the 30th, this Sunday, we will see Daniel Minele leave the South African Reserve Bank. What does that mean for the future of interest rates is certainly going to be a key question from here on in. Do we see them go higher or lower? Of course, the South African Reserve Bank will announce its next interest rates on July the 18th. We'll have that for you live here on SABC News. Let's unpack this and other factors. Of course, the G20 summit being quite critical. Chantal Marx from FNB Wealth and Investment does join us live from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Chantal, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. 0.2% higher for the JSE, but having seen the negativity out of the US, rather really actually having a lot more negativity out of Asia this morning, it was mild growth really out of the US yesterday. Where does all of that gain come from?
Yeah, it's been quite a confusing one because you would think that with risk-off sentiment ahead of the G20 summit, markets would be a little bit more circumspect, and you might actually see some pressure coming through in markets, particularly in emerging markets, because there is risk-off sentiment, and that's why you are seeing the gold price moving up, and that's also why you are seeing Asian stocks being sold off. But the fact that the US economy continues to slow down and speculation around possible Fed cuts and continued dovishness from international central banks, including South Africa, has seen the rand strengthen a little bit. And with that rand strength, there comes support for local stocks in South Africa, particularly in the retail space. We also saw quite a nice rebound out of some of the, well, apart from the retailers that actually didn't strengthen yesterday on the back of the stronger rand, we also saw a nice rebound today from the likes of a Glencore. And of course, the higher gold price is also supporting gold shares. So it's been a bit of a strange one, but yeah, I mean, happy to be in the green.
Yeah, Naspers is even finding some positivity there, despite things going haywire out in the Far East also this morning. And one would have thought that with the tech discussion bound to come up at the G20, that perhaps things wouldn't have been so great for Naspers at present, but it just keeps on finding some green territory.
So perhaps the positivity around Naspers and the support that Naspers is receiving is more related to the fact that it plans that Amsterdam listing of the bulk of its internet assets next year. So the expectation is that the discount between a Naspers and Tencent and the rest of its underlying assets are anticipated to narrow. And it seems as if that narrative has caught a bit of a bid on the market at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll continue to see how that outlays. Quick look at that currency then as well. You did make note of it a little bit earlier on, but at 14 Rand 18, gee whiz, that seems like a massive rally for it. Does it get to 14 flat? Does it go below that 14 Rand mark? Your thoughts?
So I think a lot is going to depend on what happens at the G20 this weekend. If the trade talks break down, you will probably see negativity filter through in excess of the positivity around emerging market currencies driven by those dovish or the dovish Fed. So it very much is dependent on that. Other key issues to look at for the G20 would be some sort of resolution or understanding around what next for Iran. So it seems as if Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet to discuss possible sanctions on Iran. We just need some sort of finality around the way forward and the policy discussions around what will happen next for that jurisdiction. Not only is that important from an oil price perspective, but global risk is heightened when there's geopolitical tension or even the possibility of some sort of invasion. So that's also going to be extremely important to watch. At the moment, it's very difficult to call, but if there is some sort of commitment, at least from the US and China, to come to a resolution on trade talks, and there's also a commitment to look for a peaceful solution in the Middle East at some point, even if there isn't anything explicitly decided, the rand could certainly go through 14.
Yeah, I think that will be quite significant, and the market will certainly be looking out for that one. So I'm going to put you on the spot very quickly. You think that a resolution does come to the fore? Yes, no?
No, so I don't think that a specific resolution comes to the fore, but I do think that there will be some sort of commitment to come to a resolution at some point. At the moment, it's a pretty awkward situation because it seems as if President Trump is coming under increasing pressure to get to a solution to this impasse, whereas the Chinese are getting progressively more upset about this whole situation, and they're starting to take a bit of a harder line. So it's in everyone's best interest to find a resolution, but they might still hold off before signing anything.
Yeah. At all worried about Daniel Minele leaving the SAB? Do you think that breaks down anything?
No, I mean, I think the SAB is an exceptionally strong institution. They have great management depth there, and I'm sure that the appointments that will be made by the president will be pragmatic and thoughtfully considered. I am quite interested as well in terms of where Mr. Minele will be going. This timing RE ABSA just seems a little bit too good to be true. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out and what his next move will be. He's greatly respected in the market.
Yeah, right. Chantel, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy your break as well. We'll see you only next year, that is. So thank you very much for your help as well. Then we'll get to chat to Chantel Marks very soon there from FNB Wealth and Investment. Of course, joining us live from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The SME sector is still one we continue to focus on, and On Point will continue to give you more on that now and always. Right after the break, my colleague Diabo as well will get you some news on that. From me, that's where the buck stops. Good afternoon.